Today's conversation is unrehearsed, unfiltered. They don't know what each one is going to talk about. So everyone, thank you again because it's a Saturday. I know you had to sacrifice family time, whatever, to be with us, and also the speakers. Sarah, in fact, flew in this morning.
So did Echo. I arrived 6 this morning. Delhi from India.
So you guys know, something is not in sync, you understand why. The way that we run podcast Peerty, for those of you who are new to us, they cannot wait for me to ask the question. So basically, it's free flow, organic conversation, as if we just got introduced to each other at a wedding banquet. But I did give them some kind of a scope because look at all the lives and all the track record. 1 hour is not enough to cover. Okay, so I kind of break it up into 3 acts. So act 1 is really about the turning points in their life, right from the beginning in their career. And then the second act is more about how did they position themselves for success? How did they make themselves visible and get heard and earn a seat at the table? And act 3 is legacy, of course, because also for them, they need to prepare for what's next. So I'm very curious to know what they think they will be doing next as well. Now, after that, when we open for Q&A, we will be recording, but we will not be publishing the recording. For Q&A, it is strictly about their journey, not about the company, and definitely not about AI. So Act 1, again, is really about, like for myself, I think I did a post on LinkedIn, was when I discovered that I had a voice. And that really paved the way for me throughout my entire career. It's something that is so useful for me. So I guess for you guys to just chat around, how did you discover that first breakthrough? What was the first milestone that you got and you go like, yeah, or something that was a miss? Over to you guys.
You want to start from that side?
Actually, so Christina, thank you for having all of us, and thank you everyone for turning up. As Christina said, what we're doing today is really in our personal capacity, and that we'll be sharing our journey. Hopefully that sheds some light, but make this interactive so that, it's 2 ways, not just us talking to each other, but just feel free to shout out, right? Anytime you have questions. Me, I've been in the financial institution for the last 33 years. In this current bank for the last 30 years. And there are many pivots. There's not one pivot. But you need to be quite in tune with when these pivots happen. Sometimes on reflection, then you say, aha, that was a pivot moment that I didn't realize. My first pivot was 2 years into the job. I was an assistant. And my boss said, actually, because you are quite versatile linguistically, I think we have a role for you to step up as a junior banker. So I felt that, that was a good start. But 3 years on, when the client portfolios grew, and then I realized that I had a new job, right, which is to manage a bigger portfolio. That was 1996. 98, we had the Asian financial crisis. So then I realized that, actually, you know what, my scope has changed. It's not just about me being an advisor. I also need to now change the role to become one where I handhold investors who might be going through difficult patches. And the next crisis came was the US tech crisis, 02, then 08. That was when we had different family members from the clientele that started to disagree with one another. And you see that the role now changed to become one where you need to be the mediator. So the point I'm sharing here is that as you grow in your careers, there are different roles, right? And you need to be open and agile, okay, to understand the different pivots in your life. One of my negative pivot was when we had a client who complained, and we had a situation where the client then became very, very nasty. That was also a learning point to say that clients will always be clients. They can never be your friends to some extent.
Yeah, maybe I go next. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming in on a Saturday morning. I hope this is a good start of your weekend as well. So a quick background of myself. I'm Echo Jean. I work for Microsoft, and I started my career in Big Four. I'm not sure if we have any Big Four folks here, or I see some noddings here. So I started with PwC as a tax consultant. and spent some years there. I think to me, the first few years was just fascinating because I got a chance to even do a secondment in the US, work there for several years, and come back, do a lot of consulting work. And also at the end of the last few years there, I did a lot of merger and acquisition. So I felt it's very interesting, expanding your scope, you're meeting with interesting deals. Not all deal is good deal, but at the end of the day, you learn a lot. But then there were a pivoting point, whereas I started to look at my career and look at what's next for me. If I stay in PwC or in the accounting firm, probably the next step, I will gradually become a partner. And they even talk to me about becoming a partner and all that. I'm like, do I really want to be a partner? Yes, it's glamorous to be a partner, but then you're turning yourself into a salesperson versus somebody who are giving advice, who are helping your customer and client to achieve more, use your profession. So that's where I say, I'm not sure I'm a right salesperson. I would rather go to the industry, go to a client so that I can see that my advice would help them to really generate value or streamline processes and all that to bring some impact to them, to really see the rubber hit the road. Otherwise, you always feel that not sure if the customer really like my advice or is that really implementable or the actual problem or challenge they would face and all that as well. So that's where, like, few years into PwC, I decided I'm joining the customer, one of our customer, and to become their tax director, which really opens up a whole new world for me. From there, I gradually do more of different finance jobs and eventually become a CFO and continue to be a CFO in different areas. That's really a turning point for me.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. So lovely to see all of you. And, thank you, Christina, and thank you, ladies. And Naomi, for us to get together again. It's a great opportunity for us to catch up since dinner last year. Yeah. So my career, I have to say, I had no clue what I wanted to do. Zero clue. And I don't know if any of you, I think like the current generation, like my son, he's 20 years old and knows exactly what he wants to do. Kind of, which is retire at 40. At least he has a goal.
My son at 22, when he went for an interview, people asked him, what's your aspiration? I want to retire in 2 years.
But there was a goal, right? I had none. I just wanted to really have fun. I think that was probably my goal. So when I started, similar to Echo, I started with Pricewaterhouse in Malaysia and didn't know what this job was about, but hey, I'll try it. And at least I knew what I did not want to do, so that was an important recognition because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but now I found out what I did not want to do. But because I gained all that financial expertise, I was hired by an IT company to speak to accountants because they were selling financial software. And similar to Pat, because I was articulate, I was educated in English, I spoke well, and I didn't know I had the skill, but it kind of materialized as I was going through my career. So this is probably my 4th year of working. I found that I had a very strategic view. I could help shape strategies for a startup because I was working for a startup. So that was a great moment of, I didn't know I had the skill and it was undiscovered. I didn't discover it. It was the CEO of the startup who discovered it and then helped me to nurture that. And I think then the biggest pivot, and it's a bit cheesy, it was I fell in love. And I got a divorce as well. And I wanted to restart my life. And that meant I couldn't stay in Malaysia. Because, came from a very close conservative community and I really needed to restart my life and move elsewhere. But at this point in time, I'd already worked maybe like 15 years. And I set a reputation for my airport knowledge. So anybody who worked in airports sort of knew me already in Asia. And when they heard I was looking to move out of Malaysia, I was actually then headhunted and said, hey, can you come to Australia, work for this company who want to go into airports, but they don't know anything about airports. They just know network. And that became a really pivotal point for me because then I was like, people actually recognize my skill set and my value. And it made me feel so good because I was headhunted, not me looking for something. So that was a reflection point, as you guys were saying. and I was brought to Australia where I lived for 9 years. And then that was, I think, my second act, where I then, knowing now, before it was just purely accidental, but knowing, I then honed, and we'll come back to a second act. So it was love, needing a new start, and a bit like what Christine did, just put myself out there and embraced what was coming to me.
So, good morning again. I come from a fairly unique background. At least Pat spent a lot of her years in banking. Same thing, with both of them, they kind of pivoted. I actually started with one of the largest consumer goods company. Right after everybody said you got to go join something big. Being Asian, you have to join one of the biggest. So I went to consumer goods. I joined them in marketing. This is so long ago. I joined P&G. So with P&G, it's very structured. You have to climb the ladder. Everybody compete. And then one day, as I was going through my career, my GM came to me and said, "We want to take you off the biggest brand and put you on brands that nobody want to work on." And I said, "Oh my God, are you going to kill my career?" And I actually resisted. I'm like, if you're going to do that, let's look at how else you're going to kill my career. I might as well just go look for something else. But I'll tell you, right, in hindsight, that's probably the biggest unlock for me. So, that taught me a few things. Number one, being marketeer is probably not something I'm proud of, or I get a lot of passion from. Like my peers will go like, "Oh, that's the greatest." I'm like, is that really the greatest ABC that you do in life? I think the second thing, when I was working on a lot of the smaller brands and smaller businesses, you kind of have to be very agile, right? You have to try all kinds of things. And when I look back at my career, so I was talking to someone, and the person said, "I cannot tell which industry do you work in." I worked in a consumer goods company before. I worked for consumer healthcare before. I worked for a home appliances company before. And a lot of people ask me, "So what is your career track?" I said, my career track is I love turning around businesses. I do really well when there's a problem on the business. I do really well when someone wants to start something new. And if I look back, it actually started from that day when I was really upset with my GM for trying to ask me to work on a small brand. And I think one of the biggest learning for me is you can never be too something to anyone. Yeah. So for example, when I go talk to a FMCG company, they're like, "Oh, you are in consumer healthcare before. You're not consumer enough, right?" Or you go somewhere and I go to consumer healthcare, they say, "Oh, you are not healthcare enough." But if you really understand what, like, I'm really passionate about, I think somewhere always I've been lucky enough to meet people who appreciate the kind of things that and I think as Asian, for myself, I think one of the biggest learning is there's the pigeonhole. You can fly outside of the pigeonhole and be something really different because the world out there is just phenomenal. So that's it. Now we'll go to the second round.
So we were doing a workshop on Ask Powerful Questions.
For me, I mean, there's this thing called luck and there's this thing called preparation. I don't think I overtly prepared in my own career for things to happen. I think being really clear about like what gets me excited to come in, because in life and in career, right, I'll tell you there are days, and I have one colleague here in the audience, not every day I go into office like, "Oh, hi, how are you? Life is great." No. There are days when I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Right? I think knowing what drives and what I'm excited about help a lot. Exactly. And then when I keep doing things that I'm excited about, you just get better because you try a few more times at something that I'm glad I'm part of. I think that's where, I don't know, luck happened.
Yeah. If I could address, I think for me it was more on, if I have to do something, do it right the first time. Give my all to it. Don't do it half-ass. Essentially, it was give your best and do it the best because it represents you. So I didn't know about your self-branding and your whatever. I didn't know that, in the 90s, none of those things existed. Yeah. But it was about your personal integrity. It was who you are. Also, I had a dad who, taught for 50 something years, but he still prepared every single day to go and teach. And that's what I saw. That was role modeled for me. So it was all about just showing up, doing my best, and passion, I'm also just naturally very optimistic and hooray, I've only had 4 hours of sleep, but I think I still am generating enough energy. So I'm naturally that sort of a person. But that passion is really, I think, made the difference. I didn't prepare for a career, not till I was probably 30. So that's I started working at maybe 24. So whatever that math is, like 14 years or whatever, the first 14 years, it was just that I showed up, did my best, somebody saw it and gave me the opportunity. It was not premeditated, not planned, but it was just what I brought to the table. It was noticed, but it had to be noticeable enough, right? So I don't know if that answered the...
I would say there's no one or two pivotal moments, but it's like all the opportunities that in front of you, that all those opportunities, when you're facing it, you just listen to your heart and say, do I really like this? How did that help me with my development? Because like similar to the two ladies here, to me, I felt like I'm always somebody who likes to do new things. If I continue to do something for more than 2 years or 3 years, I started to get bored. Always looking for that interest part to the new part, the new element in that job or in that career or in that post that what can energize me. So then just understand yourself and know what's energizing you. Always look out for that opportunity. And don't limit yourself to say, because I have my team member yesterday was asking me, oh, I'm in this role. I feel I'm limited. What should I do? I want that role. I really want that role. Move me over there. I'm like, don't limit yourself. Even if you're in certain role, you can always reach out to say, how can I do more in this role? Or how can I help that person in that role so that I learn about that role or learn about that industry or learn about different function that could help your own scope and exposure as well. And then make some friends, of course, maybe not friends with the customer, but make some friends with your team, with your colleague in different function, because they always teach you more. Or just, I always reflect on my own career life. Like my husband works in a totally different function than me, whereas he always brings me different perspective. Sometimes when I go home, kind of venting with him and say, this happened, this person come to me with this request, how can he do that and all that? And he would always say, hey, have you thought about why he's thinking about this? He used a very natural way to explain in terms of like having a different perspective, understanding the other person's situation, step yourself into their shoes and see how to solve a problem. It's like, I think the bad thing that all this taught me along the process is usually finance is always the person needs to say no, or need to say, oh, let's reevaluate. I don't have all the resources that I can give you and all that, right? So usually, how can we say that in a nice way, in a skillful way, that will still continue with all the constructive relationship and then help the business as well. So I think that's something that I really learned.
It's about don't be complacent. That's the most important thing. Don't be complacent and don't feel entitled. You know, it's not going to be gifted to you, you know, but do the right things. And I think the opportunities will find you, you know, and be like situationally aware, you know, because just be aware what's around you. And if there is an opportunity, so look out for it.
When you think about having that promotion or the opportunity, it's also about, you know, your first question would be, can I do it? Because I also believe that you need to take responsibility for the role. Okay. Of course, it's great to get that corner room, to get that promotion. But seriously, that personal responsibility, when you reflect on it, is, can I really hack this job? If I can't, then maybe I shouldn't put my hand up for it, right? Because some people, year in, year out, you do your PMMs and you see people who think like, wow, they're so exceptional, but actually they're not quite exceptional. They're just maybe average or good. And you also need to know that if these people come to you and say, that job is made for me, then you also need to reflect, right, as a boss, whether you should be putting a person like that in that role. Because there are responsibilities of delivering in any role, right? And you possibly would be responsible for livelihood of people that report into you. Yeah. So it's very important that the ecosystem, while you see the opportunity, but that self-reflection, okay, can I really do it? Is it the right thing to do if I'm not ready to put my hand up for a role like that? Because you're responsible. And of course, in 2 years' time, you say, for whatever reason, I didn't deliver, right? But organizationally, you have not contributed, but you may have added to the detriment of the company. So that's not a legacy you want to leave behind. Think about it.
I want to, talk a little bit on what Pat is saying, right? A lot of time, especially, I remember when I was much younger. Yes, there were days when we were younger.
We're not so old.
There's always that, I must go, especially when you have your peers all coming up, right? And then you go like, okay, what is it that I will get the next role? Am I competing well? I would say in hindsight, right, the time where most opportunities showed up for me is when I sort of took a step back and said, what can I contribute? Versus what can that role do for me? Or what can others do for me?
Mm-hmm.
Because when the focus is on you, it becomes very pigeonholed. Not so much for the career or for that next promotion per se, right?
Yep.
But everything we do become very pigeonholed because somehow, the universe has this unique way of grounding us. When you're very pigeonholed, you can't see possibilities. When you can see possibilities, things become very creative, not just for your development or your career, but also in terms of the ideas you can bring to the table. Because you don't have a timeline to chase after. And some ideas you may say that, hey, if I do it, it will take 3 years versus your intended 2 years, I must get a promotion. I think that's probably a very powerful thing that Pat brought up. How can I contribute to something? And even one of my colleagues is here, like I said, she knows that I've just joined my new company. That was one question I still ask when I started taking on this role. How can I contribute?
That's a really powerful position or attitude to have. I'm 59 and I've just taken on a new role, which is it's still in aviation, but now it's airlines versus airports, which are two very, very different functions. At 59, but I was offered this opportunity because clearly people see what I can bring because the airline industry is about to transform. So maybe that's a transformational perspective that I can bring. Because I did work for startups most of the time. Even if it's in a very big organization, it was a startup business, that we were contributing. So, and it was always about how can I contribute? What can I do? What can I make a difference? How can I make a difference and make an impact and grow the business? It's I guess like what JFK said, no, it's not like what can the country do for me, but what can I do for the country? So it's the same sort of mentality. At the end of the day, it's whatever business you're in or whoever you work for, that's the organization you're contributing to. You've got to see how you can positively impact. And that will then reflect back on you and positively impact yourself as well.
It doesn't mean you have to do exactly what the previous guy did. Bring your own DNA, your own X factor to bring life to the role.
Yeah,
that's important.
Sure. So really for Act 2, so to speak, as women especially, this was very intentional. Generally, our podcast panels are mixed gender and make sure that there is a balance. But this time it was intentional because I wanted female leaders to share how did you position yourself for success? Because sometimes maybe even you raise your hand, nobody see, and sometimes there are a lot of opportunities there, but maybe you don't have the access, right? So how did you guys or you gals kind of build your visibility so that people know about you or you put yourself out there? So I want to know throughout your career, how did you do that? And how did you eventually really take the bull by its horn and say, I'll do that, I can make this happen? That kind of a thing. And maybe a little bit of how you juggle as well with your personal life, because when you step up, it means you need to give more of your time, more of your energy, and that can take you away from the equation of the family as well. So kind of a mix of that.
Yeah. So I'm happy to start the topic. So I think what I mentioned, like the first 14 years, it was like, let's have a good time. That was me, right? And then when people knew that I was looking for a change and then they approached me, rather than me sending out my resume, that was, as I said, a pivotal point. I realized I have a skill set that people are valuing. And so then what I did was then I spent probably the next 5-6 years just honing that skill set. really building the expertise intentionally now, So I read a lot, exposed myself a lot, talked to the industry people, see how I could bring value, and then focused on those areas. So I think that was important. It was like I got recognized and I was like, let me now do something about it, not waste that opportunity. So it was just paying attention. And I think great work, and I'm not saying good work, but great work gets recognized. I had a negative experience where I thought my work will speak for itself, but no, and I did have a gentleman who tried to take credit for what I did because I did not talk about what I had achieved. And that was a big wake-up call, a really big wake-up call. And because it also impacted me financially, because I was asked to share my bonus. I don't think a guy would have been asked to share his bonus, but I was asked to share that. And at that point in time, and I was like in my late 30s or early 40s, I didn't know how to push back either, but that honed me and changed me to who I am today. I realized that just because I do great work, everybody will see it, or good work, everybody will see it. So it became like I need to do great work and communicate about it, claim credit for what it is that I did. It also helped that I had a partner who was my cheerleader at home. What do you call it? Also, similar to you, I come home, I rant, I do, speak about it, and he will just kind of just give me a different perspective. Sometimes give me advice. Now I've gotten to a point where I said, just listen, I don't need the advice. I'll figure this out myself. All I need is somebody to listen. But then I needed that guidance. I needed somebody to kind of be that sounding board. And so that partner in my life helped me to develop my career as well. And I had a really fast track, high visibility sort of a job that required a lot of travel, and I needed that support, So from a personal perspective, at home needed to be 100% 50-50 so that I could succeed in my career as well.
So I think for me, I found that throughout all this career, always finding your sponsor, your mentor, and some ally around you. That will really be helpful because you're not always there to be able to speak for yourselves. Or, of course, as aggressive as we are, we always raise hands when there are opportunities. But like Christina saying, there could be time where you don't know there is an opportunity or people are talking about certain things that you don't know. So always having somebody be there for you, know you well. So I feel I'm really lucky that throughout my career, I always have some managers or managers whom they know me well, who share the same value system, who could always be speaking up for me whenever there's new opportunity. They could say, hey, Echo can do that. Why don't you give Echo that opportunity and things like that. So I think to me, that is really, really important.
I think Echo raised a really good point. You need somebody to speak for you when you're not in the room.
Exactly.
In the boardroom. And that's the only way you can get that is through visibility.
But this is where it reflects on do the right thing, especially when others are not looking, because it
Always
comes back at you from people who speak for you and people who you speak to. It's a different thing. Mentor and sponsor, they're very different, as you know. We mentor people around us, but a sponsor is somebody who will make sure that from a career perspective, you organizationally will move up. But in my industry, finance and in wealth management, a lot has to do with what your customers, what your investors say about you. You need to have good reputation all around, right? Confidentiality in our business is utmost important. So we cannot be somebody else say, Pat talked about this other client and all that. That's very, very important. So it comes with your value system. Back to what your value system holds. It's the ability to not change your value system because the situation calls for you to be a different person. If you ain't that person, don't try and change. The consistency that you carry yourself is critical, especially amongst your colleagues and team members, because the more predictable you are, the more your people know how to react and work towards what you are looking for. So the ability to be consistent, but the speak for and speak to is super important, right? That like you, I've been very fortunate that along the way, we have mentors, buddies, and sponsors. And if the organization does not put you up for mentorship or sponsorship, take that and ask the people that you look up to and say, can I have half an hour every 3 months with you, right? Because of whatever. So take that upon yourself. That's important.
So I think what we're saying, for those of, I don't know, I find this book really helpful. I use it all the time. I always go back and reflect whenever I think I forgot. The first 100 days, I know, or first 90 days, depending on what people say, right? But basically the essence of it, especially around this whole stakeholder management, a lot of time we look and say, oh, it's the manager. Frankly, sometimes it's not your manager who is going to be either your sponsor, your mentor, or someone who can guide you, not just speak for you in your career, right? I find it very important that every time I regularly do what I call easy stakeholder mapping. So for example, very important, you would say, is the upwards and then the downwards. No, it's not so simple. A lot of time you need to say who actually will be the key folks who will influence a particular decision, right? And it can be external as well as it can be internal as well as external. So for us, for example, I have been very fortunate in my career to have met people who so-called speak up for me, not just when things are going well, and more importantly, you need them when things are not quite clear or quite ambiguous, or not so, bless you, or negative even, right? You need to know that who are those individuals you can go to and say, hey, I think I may have this issue, or can you be my sounding board? Or even worse, if you didn't know you have that problem, someone in that room can help you say that, right? Or people will speak up. I think the other thing is also in my career, I've thankfully, touch wood, I still have a long way to go. I don't really have to go out and look for a role. And a lot of time, it's not like I go and speak to all the headhunters in Singapore or Asia. I think interacting with people, sometimes, not so much of getting people to help you find a job, but what else can I learn from you? Like, is there things that I don't know about? The world is very small, especially in Singapore. It will come back to you one day. I find that extremely helpful. When you move for someone, like for example, hey, hunters sometimes call me, say, hey, do you have great people to recommend? I would always put some people up. You never know, that circle come back to you one day, and then that person, someone else who you have supported many years ago would have said, hey, I think she's really good. I think those are some of the things. In terms of family, let's be very clear. Our career and our family are not two separate entities, okay? They all are very much intertwined. I have parents who are aging. My dad, Christina knows, have got really sick when he was very, very young. So, but that's not an excuse to not go outside of your job, not go outside of your comfort zone, not go outside of Singapore. You learn a lot outside. But it takes planning. So for example, like my dad, he's not very well. How do I plan? Or maybe he's not now. Earlier, I was in China 5 years ago. But it took a lot of planning and making sure that the family can handle it. There's a support system, things like that. But everything is possible if you believe it.
Yeah, it's true. I wanted to just, on what Kathleen said about, your managers and that visibility, especially because I see a lot of young people in this room and a lot of people probably mid-career, especially the people who are in the beginning part of their career. So like in the first 5 years, first 7 years, your manager is actually going to be so busy doing what they are supposed to be delivering. They will do the performance reviews, they will help you in all of that, but their objective is not about your promotion. They're not in charge of your career, they're not in charge of your development, they're not in charge of your ambition. That's you. That responsibility sits with you on what it is that you want to achieve. So you should make sure, as Kathleen said, it's the above level, the below level, and it's across. And it's very rarely that your manager is going to be the one who is going to recommend you. But if the guys who make the decision, the people who make the decision, don't know who you are, the chances of that promotion is actually very slim. So you need to make sure that decision-making layer is aware of who you are and you're visible to them. So it's a really important point that I didn't know that. I only found that out later in my career, but, before I became a manager or a senior manager, so just be aware of that as well.
Maybe just 5-10 minutes, a little bit of what are your future plans, your aspiration. You can share
Your
what
key
you, why do you do what you do, right? What drives you and what will continue to drive you? What's the next thing next big thing, small thing you're looking for?
I'll take a step, then the rest of you can chime in. So I've been in this company for the last 30 years. But I've been very fortunate that every few years I get to do something different. So there's growth, there's learning. Now, obviously there's people who will come and say, I have a better job, better role for you. But I always ask, will I see growth? More importantly, can I give back? Okay. So there's a lot of times when I say, okay, I have a large team and I want to see them do well. So I stay on because it's an important sort of window for me at this stage to build people and to make sure that they do well as well. But beyond that, we're all, maybe most of us are in our late 40s, mid 50s. Then the question is, if you're going to live till age 100, which I think many of our next generation will live to age 100, given medical advancement, even if you live to age 85, the question is, we're all very recognized because of the company we work for. Right? Sometimes we live and we say, and then what? You kind of feel a bit lost if you don't have that flag to carry. So one of the things I would suggest you consider is, how do you develop yourself outside of your workplace? Whether through philanthropy, independent advisors, directors, mentorship. The point here is that then you have that passion longevity, purpose longevity, beyond the brick and mortar of the companies you work for. You go forward to do things that you continue to be passionate about. Maybe not within the scope of a company, but while you are getting there, right? At some point, will you retire? I will never retire, but I will go into season 2, season 3 of my life to continue doing what I like to do. Mentoring, giving back to charity. But to your point, the legacy therefore is, how do you empower people to be like you, to go further than me, right? And especially in the women community, what you shared earlier, when we go into meetings, it's like people will look at the guy first. I hope for a future where people will be gender blind and that we don't need to talk about why why were we treated this way, because there's no more such lens in future.
Supplement what you were saying. So I'm 59, so it's like probably, as you said, the third act for me. I think for me, it is the legacy that I want to leave behind is, I think you can lead with kindness. You can be kind, and and be impactful. I think that's what I want to lead, and that's what I hope that my teams will also get back. What I love, and this is what I'm focused on, is actually developing the next generation of leaders. I love that. I do that within my organization, just making sure that the team that I have, or the team that I had before as well, that they can develop into successful leaders, impactful leaders, and that they will also do the same, develop another generation. And as you said, philanthropy, or I'm a director of Women in Aviation Singapore chapter, and our mission is about balance in aviation in Singapore or in the world, as you said, gender blindness. And it's about, this organization shouldn't exist in say 10 years, hopefully, or even sooner. It shouldn't exist, or it should become something else, evolve into something else. But it's about, that's my passion and what I'm looking forward to, or my legacy that I want to leave behind, is balance and kindness.
Very similar to what they have talked about. I think if I think about, I'm also at the stage whereas I need to start it, or I want to start it to plan for my chapter 2 or season 2 or season 3 of my life, right? So one of the things, in addition to developing leaders, developing my own team, is really part of it is I really want to hire the best people that I can hire, so that I give them the platform. I can help them have a good start and then help them progress in their career. I want to leave a good team behind me, no matter what is my next role, whether in Asia, goes to the US, go back to China, wherever. I want to leave a best team from a work perspective, from people around me. And then I do have a passion for tech. Although I'm not myself is not tech background, but I do feel that with tech, it really enable you to do a lot. So back when I was in China, during the COVID time, we start, of course, as part of the company initiative, we're looking at how this COVID has actually put women at a worse off situation because of they need to stay at home, take care of family during this period of time. How can we get more of tech out to them, help them with more capabilities, with more knowledge and all that, so that they can get back into the workforce with a better start. And now we're actually working with different government and different associations just to try to help tech, to help get more women to be equipped with new technology capabilities, AI capabilities, so that it put them more advanced in their career development and not putting them worse off in this fast developing or high tech era, right? So this is really my passion is. I was just like looking for all the opportunities, whether with the company, with other outside organization, within my own society. How can we help to get more attention and more investment to help enable more women in this society to be better in their career?
I think probably it's because of the panel. That's why we are very similar with our answers. I think first, for me, a few things I would like to see change. Hopefully, during my tenure, and if not, slightly after my tenure. I think number one, how do we put more Asian talent on the globe? We're very lacking.
Yes.
In that area. Second, how do we put women more on the global stage and be courageous enough to aspire for whatever they think they can or cannot do? I think the last thing that I hope to change is, I told you guys that I love to do challenging assignments where people say it's impossible. I think there's a part of me that believes that the world is very optimistic despite all the things we see. I'm hoping that as we learn the truth, imparting of the skill, people who have crossed my way, I feel that things that people say cannot be done can actually be done. So that's probably the 3 simple things I hope to leave behind.
Fantastic. So, this has been amazing, and I wasn't surprised at all. Because when women come together, we just have so much to share and uplift, and it's autopilot. So I'm sure the audience also enjoyed a lot. I hope the 3 acts actually did kind of condense and distill all the years of experience into a nice little episode.